So namaste, welcome to this Ask Me Anything video today. And we are on volume 18 already. And I have Karen here with me. Hi, Karen.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for reading. So just a quick note before we get into it. You may or may know that I am going to America for a few weeks. And we won't be having another live satsang now until the 17th of August, because I'm taking some time off after we've done these retreats in the US. So the next Ask Me Anything video, excuse me, after this one there won't be one in August. Basically, there'll be one at the beginning of September. So if you have a question or a comment that you would like to me to talk about or answer, or something that you're struggling with, then you can leave it as a comment under this video and it will be addressed at the beginning of September. Just to recap, there won't be an Ask Me Anything recorded at the beginning of August due to me being away. So that being said, let's dive into what's coming this excuse me, this month. Karen, when you're ready.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the first question is from Maria. You are so inspiring. It says it's okay to ask a question. Do we need to focus on what we want, or does being present automatically take care of that, as long as we don't get in the way of what we want to manifest? For example, health, wealth, and family harmony. Or is it more likely to manifest quickly when we expect or give it attention without resistance? Thank you so much, Helen, for shaking up my whole belief system and helping me find peace with uncertainty. Blessings and abundance.
So one of the fundamental shifts that happens when awakening deepens and progresses is a clearer, perhaps, understanding how we can work with desire and manifesting. So as we begin to realize that we are everywhere, we are the one being, we are the one consciousness, then it begins to get clear that there isn't a separate being that is making these desires happen or has to do something to get them to come into manifestation. So it doesn't matter what we want. It could be a better job, more money, awakening itself, whatever it is that we want. And the separate being that would pursue this and try to make it happen is disappearing. So it actually flips on its head, that we begin to realize that the presence of that desire, this feeling of wanting something, is actually evidence that life is moving that way anyway. So what we want is coming into manifestation, but not because we're wanting it. That's just the way life, manifestation is evolving, constantly changing, and it's going this way. And we feel a part of that process where it feels like I want in a human body, but it's really life's urge to expand into more of something in some way. So if you can do your best to feel that desire and knowing that that's your work done as the infinite self. So in a human being, it has desires. As a formless reality, it doesn't. So feeling the desires, allowing it to come up fully. Most of us don't feel our desires. We've got so used to thinking we're separate beings that we associate desire with pain. I want this, but it won't come, or I don't deserve it. So here's the other side of your question here. Technically speaking, just to feel the desire is enough, and it will come. It's already coming into a thought form from just energy. The thought is I want, and then it comes down to an emotional level. So whether we feel good about what we want or bad, it's going to tell you whether it's going to show up or not. And why we feel bad emotionally is because we have some belief that's in the way, which you were pointing to here. So looking at any ideas of so I can't have this. Let's take a relationship, a wonderful relationship, meet the right person in my life who's going to make me feel or help me to feel safe and loved. If I don't feel deep down that I'm safe, if I'm still feeling a lot of fear, it's going to be hard for me to allow that into my life. But or that I don't feel good enough to let that happen, don't deserve to be happy or something. So we can contemplate those beliefs. We can look at the emotion and track it back to the belief. So fear, for me, said, I don't feel safe, I'm in danger. Shame said, I don't deserve to be happy. And I had lots of those to look at. So flipping it on its head, recognizing because I want it, it's already trying to happen. My desire is the evidence that it's coming into manifestation, not the cause. What does that mean? There's nothing I can do to stop it. I can slow it down, though, with my resistance, my unworthiness, and holding on tightly to that belief. So just looking at what emotions come up around the desire, and you'll see the beliefs that are slowing it down. You can't stop it, but you can make it appear in some kind of diminished form. So instead of Mr. Right, we end up with Mr. Half Right, or Mr. Mostly Wrong. I think we've all been through that experience, or Mrs., whichever. So just looking at the beliefs that are coming up, and that's the work done then. Meaning, if left alone, the self, the infinite self appearing as a human being, totally free of the mind, some desire arises, it's felt very strongly, intensely, and then it will, the energy will pass from the body, and that's your work done in that. We just need to watch, as you said, for anything that's in the way of that. So instead of I want this and I have to make it happen, it becomes as the self, I want this, therefore it must already be in progress. And just checking I'm getting out of the way of that, as you said. So wonderful question. Thank you, Karen.
This next is from Susan. Thank you so much, Helen. Thoughts snag the attention often, then back to what's right here.
Yeah, that's very, very normal. It's going to go on for a little while, just this ping pong match between attention going to the mind and then back to reality and then to the mind and back. And just to recognize that you're not the one going through that. If you can, you're watching the attention do this ping pong. You're here in front of the attention, behind the attention rather. Attention's moving from mind back to you, from mind back to you, from mind. You're watching from here. Or if that seems a little difficult to grasp right now, just allowing the attention to do whatever it's doing, noticing that at some point it comes back. And it comes back to looking at you, the real self, right here and now, faster if we don't make it wrong when it moves. So thoughts are seductive, some of them are very alluring, some more than others. Some are absolutely like flypaper to the attention. So doing your best to contemplate those ones, looking at what the emotion is that comes up with them, and then the story. And then noticing that attention is coming to rest more and more as you do that on what is real, and less interested in what's unreal. Very, very normal. And just doing your best not to fight with that. Of course, there's a desire for attention to stay here because it feels so wonderful. But it only feels bad when it goes to the mind because we're saying that shouldn't happen. So if you can just kind of let that happen, I know it's counterintuitive at first, you'll find it pops right back to you very, very quickly. Thanks, Karen.
This question is from Spiritual Seeker. Dear Helen, thank you so much for your encouraging words in response to my question about fear. Asking fear what it was trying to tell me resulted in an avalanche of feelings. I rather felt like a small child in a dark, threatening world. I think part of this is due to my upbringing, since both of my parents experienced a lot of fear being children during World War II, which affected the rest of their lives. It really stuck with me when you said that staying safe at home in your experience was because of fear of other people. Suddenly I realized this is true for me too. Always alert, self-conscious, unsafe. I now realize fear has kept me from living freely. It has resulted in a life of smallness, fearful of disappointing of people's opinions. All of this is coupled with a strong sense of guilt and shame. Furthermore, it resulted in codependency. I leaned on my husband so much, but he passed away almost 6 years ago, and now this vulnerability runs riot in me. Even though I was really nervous about it, I took it upon myself to go abroad in a small camper van with my dog. It was something my husband and I were planning on doing, but it never happened because of his illness. I was dreading the whole thing, but I felt I should do it as some sort of tribute to him. Besides, I had bought the van in February and still had not used it. Upon arriving abroad after a 6-hour journey, I thought I had better walk my dog. Would you believe I stepped into a rabbit hole and I sprained my foot so badly I could not walk for days? The amount of fear that was released after that happened was terrible. Here I was alone on a campsite with my dachshund, completely stuck. I wonder if some divine intervention wanted me to come to a standstill. It was at that point that I remembered having written in to ask Helen anything. Ask Helen anything. So I listened to your reply again and again. It gave me such a feeling of support. So thank you so much. You have no idea how much it has helped me during these difficult moments. You said you were right there with me, and that is exactly what I needed to hear. Theoretically, I do understand I am not a separate being, but that is in the mind. I hope one day fear will be replaced by the opening of the heart. Much love. May.
Wow. Well, thank you for writing back in. It's always quite gratifying to find out what happened after, and what you did with that answer is just beautiful. And well done to you for going and honoring your husband in that way, and having the courage to face that fear anyway. And you found yourself in that situation there with your ankle hurt in the campsite by yourself. And sometimes I remember in my own awakening, there were times I was just literally backed into a corner by life in a way. I remember traveling one day. I had no money at all and no insurance, breakdown insurance, we call it here. So broke down in the middle of nowhere on the motorway, and it just happened to be right next door to we call them services here, where there's food and facilities and all of that. So I got this flat tire and I had no spare tire or anything. It was like literally I had to go pick my son up, so it wasn't a journey I couldn't do, I could avoid doing. But here I am, and I got the car into the car park, and I don't know what I'm going to do because I don't have any insurance here, any breakdown cover, and I'm 300 miles from home at this point. So even if I could phone someone, I'm 300 miles away. And so I just pulled into the parking space and got out of the car and decided, went in and used the facilities, came back out. I'll sit there and think about what I'm going to do. My heart was pounding and pounding and pounding. And then somebody knocks on my window in the car. And it scared me at first. I still had this lot of fear. And there's this man, two spaces down, there's this white van parked next to me, and it said mobile mechanic on the side of this. And he knocked on the window. He said, you've got a flat tire there. I said, yeah, I'm just going to see what I can do about it because I don't have any breakdown. He said, oh, I can get you sorted out, and I don't know what he did, but he would not let me give him any money at all, which was good because I didn't have any. I offered to go in and get him a coffee at least. He was there with his wife, and they were just going on holiday with their child. They'd stopped. And from in the middle of nowhere, so I pulled into this, I was just happened to be passing this service station as I got the flat tire. And where I pulled in, literally right next to this mobile mechanic. And, that taught me in that moment so much more than any kind of meditation or any kind of reading of any scripture, which of course are important, all of that. But he was life saying, you're never really stuck, actually. And half an hour later, I'd had a hug from his daughter because she thought I was kind of cool because I had my crystals on at the time, and said goodbye to them and asked for their address so that I could send them a thank you card. And I'll never forget those people. I never saw them again, but there was this absolute panic of I'm all by myself. I have no money. What am I going to do? My worst fear, literally, one of my worst fears at the time. And there was, you could say the Buddha or Krishna right there as a mobile mechanic, literally two car parking spaces away. And I hadn't seen him as I pulled in because I was in such a cold, that cold sweat when fear really kind of comes. And I'm driving the rest of the way down to pick up my son. I'm just like, that's amazing. That's amazing. And so many things happen like that. We call them tiny miracles, and you must have seen something go on like this when you made it through somehow, this situation. You made it through and you faced your fear. And I really want to say, you said that theoretically, intellectually, that you are not a separate being. But the heart opening that you're looking for, I really want you to take on board that the heart opening starts with courage. You went anyway. It won't start perhaps as this great big overflowing gushy love moment. That might be later, but the heart opening is happening. That's why you ended up in that situation in the first place, to show yourself. Courage is not the absence of fear, as the saying goes. It's continuing even with the presence of fear. It's easy to anyone to do anything without fear, but when fear's there and we do it anyway, that's enormous. And that's the heart opening, the love beginning to be allowed through and override the fear that inhibits us from moving forward. And you go through something like that, as terrible as it is, you are changed when you come out the other side of that, aren't you? You are like, I've lived through this. And I'm driving down the motorway like, wow. Wow, I really should put a spare tire in the car, but wow, and make sure. And it was like life was just saying, you are safe, no matter what you really think, you are safe. And I really took it upon myself to try to remember those times, because we tend to remember, I could have driven away from that moment going, I broke down with no money, and the shame of it, of why was I in that situation? But I chose to try to remember the miracle that happened. These beautiful people that helped me for no other reason than out of the goodness of their hearts. Krishna in disguise, helping, and with a spanner and another tire. It was just amazing. And the tire that they put on wasn't amazing, but he said it'll get you down there and back, back home again, change it. He said I was only going to give it away anyway, so here you go. And I was like, that's pretty amazing. So you will have had similar experience over and over again, and it's just remembering those. And as you push forward anyway, despite the fear, then you'll see this heart opening really continue, and it will begin to become more and more obvious, the presence of love emerging. That's really all we want, isn't it? Not waiting till the fear goes. It's the self, the love of the self, the infinite self that took you on that trip. Driving 6 hours on your own, traveling 6 hours to get there, and then somehow managing, even though this happened. That's an ego wouldn't do that, would it? A separate self. It would stay home most likely and feel ashamed that it didn't go. The self is like, we're doing this, road trip time. So well done to you. Really, really good. And just keep looking for more evidence of that. Like, where is that happening in other places? Not necessarily in a road trip, form of a road trip, but where you don't let old things hold you back anymore. When you speak up for yourself when you need to more. When you do something kind for yourself that you wouldn't have done before. When you say no to someone when you really should have and perhaps haven't been able to. you know, there's a lot of moments like that that we tend to ignore as just being, you know, oh, it was good luck or something. When we see all of those together, we see this is really love emerging in and as our life. So well done to you. That's so lovely to hear. Thank you. Thanks, Karen.
Now, May had a PS, which is, I can hardly believe this fear to be a sign of my awakening speeding up. In fact, I thought quite the reverse.
Oh, thank you. Sorry if I cut you off too early there, Karen, but yeah, it's it will never seem like fear is something helpful, but it will allow us to this courage of the self, this power of the self. It will make that more obvious. It's only with that kind of friction, isn't it, of some negative emotion coming up, that we actually move forward as the self. Without a little bit of suffering, a struggle, then the self cannot often remain in the background. So this fear is kind of the love, even though the fear was there, the love emerged anyway, and your actions came from that place. So that was the biggest lesson for me, was to see that everything that I think is working against my awakening is actually working for it. That was a huge key, because then when some fear comes up, or shame or something, we're not looking at that. What have I done wrong? Why is this happening again? We can see it took me a while to consistently turn this around, but this must be because I'm succeeding, the reason that this is happening. And you can see very different actions happened for you. You took yourself off and you went there and you did it. That's got to have come from a different level of consciousness inside. So thanks, Karen.
Okay. Jacqueline writes, thank you, Helen, much love. And Arinara says, hi, Helen. I noticed that I love to fly like a butterfly from viewpoint to viewpoint, or in other words, from perspective to perspective, or from focus to non-dual. No focus where I am, that I am without thoughts, in total peace. And another time I look at the world from the personality perspective. From this focus, I can ask my soul self questions, and I answer from my soul self perspective in an amazingly beautiful way. Lately, I asked my soul self to tell me something I don't know. The question from the personality and the answer from the soul self, comes to me through writing. The next day, my pen wrote out of nothing about an unconscious belief in the mind program, and it was right in the bullseye. Never thought about this, never noticed it. It helped me so much in letting this old pattern free. The fun thing is, I know it is all me. By me, I mean consciousness. I love to listen to your satsangs. I love listening to NDA stories. Lately, I like to listen to the channeling messages, and I notice that I feel if they're coming up from deep love or another place. I always held myself back from people who are channeling. It felt always that this was not for me, until recent to my surprise, I'm interested in it. And I can see they're channeling a part of themselves. I've never heard somebody speaking about what I experience. It feels so playful, but also so loving. Are you familiar with what I'm expressing? Thank you so much for your satsangs, for the aware love and light you shine through. Helen.
Thank you. To me, there's two kind of subjects in there that you're talking about. And the first one being this ability to shift focus, so we can focus on that which is everywhere. The no focus, I think you called it, something like that, and then shift in perspective back to a particular point in focus, where we can function as an individual. And this is kind of just going on, isn't it? Sometimes I feel more like the everywhereness. Sometimes I feel more like a someone somewhere, and I'm not really limited by either of those perspectives. I can function in both of those ways, we could say. So very, very normal. And probably as your awakening is unfolding, you'll see more just the someoneness functioning in front of you, the apparent separate self, the person, the someone, and attention just resting more as that no focus, or the focus on something that is everywhere, happening more and more often, so that the someoneness just seems to be going on. You don't have to shift perspectives. Your identity is more firmly rooted by the day in that which is everywhere and permanent and stable. And the someoneness is just going on in front of you. Like right now, the someoneness of me is answering this question. Or the everywhereness is using the someone persona to answer this question. So yeah, I hope that that helps with that. As to the channeling, yeah, very, very similar. I had a phase where I was completely obsessed with it in my own awakening journey, listening to channeled works, some very, very profound, again, some that didn't really resonate. And I think a clearer and clearer awakening is going to give a clearer ability to discern, as you said, which ones are coming from the truth. You can kind of feel that, can't you, from some experiential place inside. And some where whatever or whoever is being channeled, it doesn't feel quite so integrous. It doesn't feel quite so, I don't know, to me, it felt empty of the fullness and richness of the self, of the infinite self. And really, at first I was all for it, and then I was dead set against it. It's in duality, you know, I can't be dealing with that. And then it came back around to, well, every form of truth has its, every way that truth has been expressed has its validity. And it's really more about what the effect that teaching has on me when I apply it, rather than where it's coming from. So from that perspective, we could have some profound spiritual truth from a 6-year-old child, or a 90-year-old man, or from the birds singing in the morning. We could learn something from everywhere. But you're right, this kind of capacity to discern what's in alignment with where we're going with our energy and what isn't, perhaps more importantly, gets clearer, doesn't it? There's just this kind of nudge inside. This doesn't quite feel harmonious with where my path is going. And at the end of the day, as you said, we're all channeling our own self anyway. Anyone who's channeling something or someone else, it's got to be part of the everywhereness that we are. My only hesitancy with channeling is that the very act of channeling is kind of saying it's not coming from that person's direct experience most times. They're channeling maybe someone or something that has direct experience, but if it's coming through some egoic sense of self, then that's going to be filtered and diluted or diminished in some way, or colored some way with that person's interpretation. It doesn't make it wrong. It just kind of means that we have to just use that discriminative discernment faculty that we have to just double check that it's what's in alignment with our own pathway. So hope that helps you. You can, yes, I very much resonate with what you've said there. And, you know, eventually you can read anything, focus on any teaching from anywhere, and it immediately hits home, or it doesn't. There's a kind of sense of that, isn't there? And then even further than that, there's a point where you only tend to draw things into your life that are very high truth anyway, resonate on a very non-dual level, so to speak. So hope that helps. Thanks, Karen.
Louisa writes, regarding the first two questions in particular, it's important to note that not everyone is starting from the same set of circumstances and separate self-beliefs. So the dropping away if these don't always look the same. In the first instance, it's possible that the questioner is noticing for the first time that the loved one seems to want, need, demand their separate self in interactions and is insisting more strongly in various ways. It's possible that unloving and abusive behavior are becoming less and less tolerable after a lifetime of being conditioned to accept them. So more, not fewer boundaries may be what is emerging from the true self. Not tolerating that which reinforces unworthiness is loving for both parties, notwithstanding that one operating from ego may protest. This is often omitted from spiritual teachings, and it keeps those conditioned for codependency stuck in unhealthy relationships, feeling there is something wrong with them or that they are doing something wrong. It's possible to have insight, compassion, love, and understanding, and to remove oneself from situations that do not respect who you really are. Necessary in the second question is discernment as to where the doubt arises. It's possible, as Helen pointed out, that it's from unworthiness to be uprooted. It's also possible, however, that it's from wisdom uprooting something else, the unquestioned belief that I have to earn a certain amount of money or have to remain in a particular field of endeavor, with whether or not it is a good fit. Doubt is not always an obstacle to be broken down. Sometimes it's a guiding in us in a new direction we may not have previously considered. It's opening a new door. We can cultivate discernment to really listen to what doubt is telling us. And that is not always, I still believe I'm unworthy. Sometimes it's saying, I'm worthy.
Thank you, and I appreciate your comments there. And those were in reference to questions that were asked and answered in the last session. And yeah, I agree about doubt, absolutely. For me, doubt was the biggest tool I ever had, biggest teacher as well, in terms of what makes our awakening move faster and where we're stuck, the doubt in particular. And yep, I agree with also what you said in the first particular part, because there was, for me, an ability to put more boundaries into place, having contemplated this unworthiness and released it. Things that I could not do as a separate self, I could do as the infinite self, and releasing that unworthiness from the effects it was showing up as in my life. So an ability to, a tendency rather to let people take advantage of me, was replaced by an ability to actually be able to say no when I needed to. So absolutely agree with you there. Thank you for your comments. Thanks, Karen.
Okay, Gillian writes, please, could Helen talk about energetic boundaries, the kind recommended by some spiritual teachers or healers who say that you need energetic boundaries if you easily pick up other people's energies? Does this kind of practice reinforce the sense of a separate self, or would Helen recommend it? Many thanks.
Good question, and very similar to what I was just saying, actually, in the last one. For me, energetic boundaries were vital, absolutely vital. There are people in our lives that aren't always going to respect us or treat us well, let's just say. And there are also people in our lives, at least initially, who through no fault of their own, have a much lower frequency. Perhaps they're really going through something, perhaps they're depressed or something like that. So we tend to, without these energetic boundaries, we tend to be more like a sponge, tend to soak up these vibrations and feel them as if they were our own. And as a someone who I thought I was, a seeker, I tried for many, many years to put some kind of boundaries in place. So I would spend time with people who I knew I shouldn't. I would go and help them even though I know I was going to end up really paying for it afterwards energetically. And I'd read about sort of, putting these boundaries in place, healthy boundaries, and I just had absolutely no capacity to do that at all. And of course, it fed back into my own shame. Why can't I do what's right for me? Why am I such a doormat when everybody walk all over me. And I'm sure that's many people's experience. And it came from, as I said, my own shame, unworthiness. And even knowing what I was supposed to do, I just couldn't do it. And that place of not feeling good enough, it's really hard to say no most often, or enough at least. So I go be with this person to help them. I'll say, look, I've got an hour, I can pop over and help you do what, maybe they were moving house or something. And 3 hours later, you're still there and you're feeling terrible because there's no capacity to say, look, I just need to go home now. I need to, there's just words could not come out of my mouth. So it was only really when I actually began to see that I'm not separate to these beings, that this capacity to actually do what's right for this body and mind began to emerge. And I heard myself saying, things like, please don't treat me that way. I don't deserve to be treated. The way you're speaking about me right now I get that you're angry, but you don't need to put it onto me. And it was really shocking to hear the self talking through my mouth in a way. The self has always been talking through my mouth, but not diminished by these kind of unworthiness. So it's paradoxical to our mind. It says, if I don't believe there's any separate beings outside of me, if I realize I'm everywhere, then mind says, I'm never going to impose healthy boundaries because there isn't anyone to impose them to. And technically that's true. There isn't anyone else then. There never has been. But in the lack of separation, in the knowing of your everywhereness, the frequency of the body-mind is higher, much higher, and increasing all the time. So much so that people who really don't have your best interests at heart tend to gravitate away from you, because those that are coming in are going to reflect your own self-love that's emerging. And anyone that still is hanging around that perhaps would want to try to take advantage of your time, your kindness, your money, whatever that is, there is the capacity inside to actually do what's right for you, your body, mind. In fact, there is increasingly nothing inside you that can override that guidance. So somebody asks you for help and you say no, and that feels weird at first. But there's a knowing as that deepens that is what's best for both of you in that situation. That if I say yes and go anyway, I feel terrible. They're feeling guilty, probably deep down inside for some beings, but still adding to their own guilt that they've yet again done this to another being. And we've all been there, of course. We've all been the one taking advantage and taken advantage of in the cycle of separate beings. So for me, it was the complete opposite. Only when I actually realized who I really am and began to live like that could the power and the love of the self do what's right for both bodies, not just me. It happened to be what's right for me. Because it's right for me, it must be right for the other being too, because they are me. And I'm still on a journey of discovery around that. Even last night, I was out with my family and I was quite tired after we'd been out for a meal. And they asked if we wanted to go back and have a coffee with them. And I just said, I really just need to go home now. And before I would not have said that, I would have gone in and sat there wishing I'd just gone home. So it's surprising and it's paradoxical to what the mind says is going to happen. That only when I realize there aren't any separate beings can I actually form these energetic boundaries between the bodies, not separate beings, but bodies. And then life can move people away from you that really don't value you the way that you should be valued and loved, which is huge relief for most of us. So very important, but not always possible to create these boundaries when we're really sort of stuck in a lot of unworthiness or guilt within our own separate sense of self. As the infinite self takes over, then there's the capacity to really allow that love to flow, and it will surprise you in the way that it does. Quite often by being firm, loving, but direct, and total opposite of what I've been trying for years to achieve as a separate being happened effortlessly as a self. And no one was more surprised than me. So hope that helps you to kind of bring the two things together and allow love to emerge into your own life. Thanks, Karen.
Nishi writes, thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
And Mimi says, what was said about karmic patterns? With a heart emoji. So I think she loves what was said.
Okay.
Ado Martin, do we have individual souls?
So this was very confusing to me as well, and a good question. So yes, there is an individual soul. So first and foremost, we are the the infinite ocean of being. I use this analogy of the ocean and the waves because it really helped me at first. I am the ocean. I'm everywhere. I'm the whole body of water. And I'm also showing up as an individual wave on the ocean surface. Each wave is different to every other one, but not separate. The individuality does not mean separate. And you probably know I'm a word nerd, so I really love taking words apart. Individual breaks down into indivi and jewel. So it comes from the root word, Latin word indivi, which means indivisible, not divided into two. And then jewel, so two. So not two and two. So the not two-ness, the oneness appearing as two or many or billions of individual souls. And you could think of the soul as the first energetic manifestation arising out of the unmanifest self, called a jiva in the East, in the Hindu tradition. So not separate, just like a wave isn't separate to the water or any other wave. It's all the ocean, but it is arising just that way to express its individuality, as if it wants to experience itself. The self wants to experience itself. The ocean wants to experience every which way it can. So it is appearing as all these individual souls, but not separate, with our physical body then being the outermost reach of that individuality. Everyone's physical body is different to everyone else's. Even in identical twins, there's slight differences in the physical bodies and in the personalities and etc., all of that. So what makes you is unique and individual, but not separate to anyone else. You are this wave, and the wave kind of carries on forever and is growing and growing and growing and learning and evolving through different physical incarnations. It'll experience life through a human body, and then it will discard that one, and then it'll get the next one, and it's learning this individual soul. Against the backdrop of realizing, we're realizing I am the ocean too. So I can show up as the ocean, I can show up as the wave. And both of those are equally valid there. So hope that helps to kind of understand. It was very confusing for me at first. How can I be individual and unique, and yet there's only one of us? It doesn't seem to make sense to the mind. Thanks, Karen.
Okay, that's it for today.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for reading, Karen, and very beautifully done. Thank you. So thank you for everything that you've all sent in. And if you do have a question or a comment or anything that you would like me to address next time, please just put it as a comment under this YouTube video. And as I was saying at the start, in case you missed it, it'll be beginning of September now before the next one of these comes, because I'm away in the US and going to try and take some time off, which I'm not traditionally that very good at. So it's a work in progress. Thank you very much for everything you sent in. And thank you, Karen. Namaste.